following text is a transcript and summary of a downloadable audio file found on a website that was said to be available to the public over the course of 3 days, before being taken down by an unknown cause. Any trace of the site had been removed entirely. This has naturally led to extreme doubt and near-instant dismissal at first that the site simply never existed. However, upon hearing the file's contents, the possibility of a missing persons was raised, as well as certain other curiosities. The file is an MP3 file that contains an audio recording featuring almost 26 minutes of narration by an individual apparently named Chris Lawrence. The very nature of what he speaks of throughout this recording seems extremely detached from reality, as if he's experiencing intense hallucinations. Topics mentioned are regarded one as Sonic.exe, including a detailed description of how it inflicts damage on some kind of influence of certain individuals' minds. Yet with the exception of one particular section regarding a statement about the deaths of several people, the narrator seems almost completely calm and collected. There are no signs of psychological breakdown or any kind of high stress levels in his voice. The exceptions mentioned involves a narrator becoming angry on the subject of a fan-made creation being both responsible for people's deaths as well as falling victims themselves. Throughout the recording can be heard several ambient noises of a disturbing nature, suspected of being placed in order to mask the location of the individual. These sounds are also very convincingly mixed in to give the impression that they are moving around the distance. Authorities have currently ceased any and all investigations into this matter, as it is now officially considered to be a cold case with too many uncertainties and no solid evidence. One other file was received along with the MP3 file, a .pdf, that was first believed to be corrupted, until an analysis showed that it was an encrypted image that needed to be rearranged somehow. Only just over 65% of it was corrupted beyond recovery. After putting together what was salvageable, the result was a bizarrely fragmented image containing what is believed to be the narrator himself, along with several of his personal details. Both are largely obscured due to the corrupted sections that, after assembly, had clearly spelled the words, "I'm listening," presented in all caps with a pixelated mixture of crimson, black, blue, and red. What can be made of this individual details includes the majority of his name, along with 11 stray letters of various details such as address, date of birth, and occupation. The other noteworthy detail of the strange letters is that they spell the words, "Stop killing," and are placed in the right order, littered throughout the overlaying sentence. This occurrence, whatever managed to corrupt the image file, was unsuccessful in covering these specific areas. The individual appears to be of an average height and build, standing straight with the long blonde hair just past shoulder length. His face cannot be seen due to the part of the image being corrupted. He's wearing what looks to be nothing more than a simple set of jeans and a midnight blue shirt underneath a black hooded top, carrying what is questionably a set of firearms, consisting of what can be recognized as an IMI Desert Eagle on his right hip, a Glock 17 on his left, and both a Remington 870 pump-action shotgun and Heckler & Koch 8M8 XM8 assault rifle on the back. Each firearm has a strange visual effect of being covered in some kind of dense swirling fog. The fog itself is a mixture of gray, black, purple, and teal, and is wrapped tightly around the shape of the firearms. Strangely enough, no holsters are present for this equipment. Also, there are two unidentifiable items attached to the outer side of both his legs. Whether these are weapons or not is uncertain, as there's too much of the image obscured to tell. Very little else can be said about this image, other than what can be made out as a background behind him. It suggests scenery that is either visually altered in several ways, resulting in a series of twisted and disturbing shapes that are colored with a blur of black, mauve, and various shades of blue that share no similarity to any scenery currently known in the world. Certain factors such as the date of the upload, details of any location allegedly involved, as well as both the name and other contents will not be included to prevent investigation from any further outside source. The recording begins with a sound that resembles an audio jack being plugged into an unstable or defective socket of some kind, before switching to an ambience of which has a resemblance of both howling and cries of pain that upon first impressions have been tweaked with the audio software at its lower volume. At approximately 3 seconds, there is a voice of a male with a British accent, estimated to be in his mid to late 20s. "My name is Chris Lawrence, and and I have a warning for anyone who is now hearing this. Whether you like it or not, you best hear this, and you need to know. If you were involved with what has now caused more damage than you would imagine, that means fan fictions, artwork, and constant attention to something that was never meant to be messed around with, you have a lot to answer for. You just love playing around with these concepts. Like all other popular things turn into memes that you can just take into order to help it grow for your own sick little... No. No point in going there until you know why I'm here and what I'm talking about. I never really imagined doing something like, I don't know, a podcast or whatever the hell you want to call this thing. I don't want anything other than some of your time, and if that's okay with you. The pieces of the picture I'm here to tell you about are pretty big with themselves, but hopefully you'll just see it's all bad. And in the end, though, I just want you to listen more than anything. I'd best get to the point, right? Because I'll confuse you any further. You could say that this all, quote-unquote, began when I was checking some stuff on YouTube one night. I was watching some top 10 video on creepy moments in games, and after seeing this one game in particular, I got a bit curious. Well, I say curious, but I'm pretty sure at this point I was actually controlled on some level. I'm sure that's how it works. I guess you could say I had my own reasons for regretting the day I even heard the name Sonic.exe or anything about it, for that matter. Even then, I don't actually think regret would really be the word of my choice. So if anyone just stopped listening, fine. Maybe it's just nice to stay ignorant. That is until they might come across my kind of problems. But to anyone who's still here, you want to hear what I have to say. If you really want to know about this, and if you really just understand or even believe that I'm trying to stop what follows in this thing's wake for real, then you will stay the hell away from it. There's a lot to wrap around your head. I don't even know where to begin. I guess carrying on about how I first exposed myself or got exposed would be a good start. So I mentioned a list of creepy stuff in games, and this had me interested. I had heard a couple of things about what it was, and some research followed. Research usually led to something with a download link, but like I said, this was more than just a fascination. It was being compelled without knowing it. And the more I think of it, the more I'm certain I was being called to since I first saw him. All that aside for a second, I succeeded in getting the game and went through it. The version I got was just a replication of the original though, extra stuff in it, but most importantly it wasn't the actual thing. Now if by chance you haven't seen what this thing is, it's basically the first Sonic game if it was done by Wes Craven on an especially bad day. I gotta say, as freaky as it must have been for most people who don't have the stomach for horror, or maybe even a few that do, it couldn't go unexplored forever. Violence is everywhere you look and all that, am I right? Seeing the characters after they were caught is what I remember most clearly. That and the face at the end, but there were a couple of details that were a little off from what I saw in any video. It's easier to say that this was something around the eyes, but in this case there was really something about the eyes. The pupils. They were darker than I saw beforehand, and that wasn't my monitor. But the really weird part was that when I must have looked away for about a second and then back again. This time they were really bright, and it made his eyes look bigger. Oh yeah, there was one other thing to mention. No feeling of fear, only interest. I obviously thought nothing of it back then, but now that I have had time to look back on all the points where I should have been afraid, it's amazing how much an effect it has, and how much attention you don't pay. I felt I just had to find out about anything else I could find about it. I wasn't finding the original version, didn't even know why, I do now of course, but at the time, like I said, totally oblivious. But then there was something in that moment that definitely signified things were really starting. Shortly after that, Steam had told me that someone named Gamma had added me as a friend. Curiosity got me, of course, and I opened the chat to say hi, but without anything saying they were typing, and they said hi first. And this person knew my name. I did feel a bit weirded out by that. I mean, it could have just been somebody I already knew who found me on here, but I just played through the game, so I already had far-fetched ideas going through my head. I asked them how they knew me, and their response was a little strange at the least. At the most, it was just detached and insane. The person started going on about how I had caught his attention and that they wanted to take me back into the beginning. It stopped soon after that. But I had the life scared out of me by laughter coming out of my headphones. It was loud. It made me smack them off my head. And yes, it was the same laughter I heard in the game. I checked to see if it was still up, and nothing was there. Then something came up in the chat that caught my eyes again. The words, "Gamma is now deceased." Yep, you just heard that right. It might have been that I just hadn't paid much attention, but I'm pretty sure Steam doesn't show that one. It got better though. It switched to "Gamma is now mine" and a link that came up that said "The Beginning." I didn't click on it, but my PC just started downloading the game anyway, and it wouldn't cancel. Kinda made me wonder what the point of the link was if it had just did that. Anyway, it was done within a few seconds, and I got put on the desktop in even less time. And then, except for the chat window and the brand new desktop icon, nothing. I would have believed this was somebody who's good with coding and was able to play with a not-so-funny joke on me, but after everything else, you know what I'm thinking. And you're probably thinking it too. Well, we both got proven right very quickly. The screen went dead and I heard something like scratching. Then slice marks started etching itself into the screen. No, not a video or anything, I mean actual scratches. My monitor was being ripped up in front of me. The scene was getting twisted up where there was a cut, and I was buckling and curling outwards. And underneath there was something that looked like living tissue. There were words appearing, but I also heard something over the sound of the screen being destroyed, and it was coming from my headphones. Like a genius, I grabbed them to listen in. It was several screams at once. Once they were really distorted. Quiet at first, but clearly getting louder. As more of it appeared, I was like I was hearing stuff from somewhere really nasty. I heard the laughter again. A lot louder than before. Pretty much deafening, actually. Only this time it didn't come from the PC. It was more like something behind me. And then, complete silence. When it stopped, the words were in all caps saying, "I'm listening." My brain had a hard time with all that at first. I dropped my headphones and checked outside the door, only to see nothing there. Not only that, but when I looked back at the monitor, nothing. No scratches, just a black screen. Now this is what got me thinking about the whole control thing to begin with, and I still wouldn't know if it wasn't pointed out to me. I doubted for my own safety, but only for a few moments. After that, I didn't have any problems with going near the PC, even after what I had just witnessed. There was no fear afterwards, or towards it, but no curiosity this time. Didn't seem important back then, of course, but I probably should mention it now. Anyway, the PC was still running and the monitor was just fine. First thing I did was check Steam. No one named Gamma or anything else I had ever met them. Except for the new game I had. Everything looked normal again. I do remember it having a new icon, though. Just those eyes with that blood trickling down underneath. Quite a sharp resolution, too. I kept thinking on and off about what I had imagined all of it. No one else in the house was kicking my door off its hinges because of the noise, but believe me, it felt so real. In the end, I was still unsure, but then I stopped thinking about that because a strange feeling started creeping up on me. It was like I wanted to sleep, but not because I was tired. It was more of a sense of just not wanting to be awake anymore. No kind of depression or anything, but I just didn't feel like me. I just fell asleep like it didn't happen. Shouldn't have. I was shown the events of the game again, and it was almost exactly the same. One thing, however, was changed. The look. There was almost something cartoony about it. Everything looked so grim and real. Imagine someone putting all these characters in places through Photoshop or something, then making them just a tad bit off from a human's height. Seeing them from that perspective for the first time... You've seen them in games, but the flesh as if it were. The eyes were still almost as big enough as you might have found it to be a bit creepy, but probably wouldn't even care because it was Sonic. But I cared, and I wanted to stop it, but couldn't on account of being locked in a room, being made to watch throughout a window. I never did get shown what he did do to those poor guys, only the screams and the static. I should point out, though, that they weren't the screams you get in the game. They were fitting for each character. What I did get after all of those, though, was a freak bursting through the window after he was done, growling something about suffering being a part of who I am. Can't really remember the exact words, although the words I do remember was him yelling at me to wake up. I did just that in one hell of a hurry. didn't even get much sleep. As I was sitting on the edge of my bed, I could have sworn I was still dreaming when I saw it was on my monitor. But I wasn't, unfortunately. It looked like a video clip of the freak, but he looked as real as he was in the dream. His eyes were completely fixated on me. Also, seeing as though you know who I'm talking about, let's just go with a pet name like Freakazoid. I'll come up with something demeaning for him later. You don't really have a clue who or what he is, but you do know what he looks like. And you may think you know what he does, but you don't. You really don't. It was a dark background, so I could only barely see anything other than him, but I could just make out something like a crimson sky. There was some kind of shapes dancing and twisting around the distance like they were something that was alive. After a few seconds or so, I realized this wasn't a video clip. No loop. Freakazoid was actually staring at me with a low, toned-down smile on his face. That feeling hit me again, only this time it was more like needing to do just one more thing before you went to sleep. You know, like 5 more minutes on a game or 1 more video to watch. I actually felt like I needed to get to him. No trace of common sense at all. The desktop came up by itself, but the background was still the same thing, until he started looking at the game. The screen went on a bit strange after that, giving a split second of red static here and there. The mouse cursor flew all around over the screen, and, well, it all stopped with the cursor being right next to the icon. My hand just went to my headphones and then the keyboard and mouse. I clicked on it, and it was just like before, without the updated look. The music, scenery, murders, the words, the characters, and the way they got locked out when they died. It was just one small detail you might want to know about. My hands were stuck to the keyboard and mouse, and no, I don't mean I needed to keep my hands on them. I mean, I tried to remove them, and it was like everything was stuck to the desk, except that I was able to slide the mouse around. I played throughout the end, and seeing the same ending, the rounds of static followed by the laughter. Then there was another round of static. The picture stayed the same, but now it said, "What are you?" Yet another round of static and, right, okay, I don't even know if this is going to work. And don't ask me how I know I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it. Audio undergoes a second strange interface before being cut to approximately half a second of static. The transition that follows can be heard as winds blowing, as if the recording was made in an outside environment. This consistently remains for the rest of the segment. 4 seconds in, there's a voice of a male with a slightly diluted American accent. Male's voice who would appear to be heavily modified voiceover, including a substantially low tone from a pitch shifter. However, there's no sign of tampering of any kind throughout except for the beginning and end of the statement, visible or otherwise. First visible sign of tampering throughout the entire recording to this point implied a crude yet unknown translation from the recording of current segments. Location showed that the segment was placed into the recording during the process itself, without the aid of another audio device. Having fun? I hope so. I hope you're enjoying watching. All those sealed fates, and you knew they were sealed. You knew what was going to happen to them, and yet you just watched. Although, you did more than just watch, didn't you? You took control of them, led them to me, gave them up. You are as responsible to their deaths as I am, Chris. There's something about you. Something I can see. I wish to take a closer look at you. Let's talk in private, shall we? Background effects are added in what appears to be a modified sound clip of screaming in a room that carries an echo. This loops throughout the rest of the segment. Several more screams are introduced into the background, all of which are being determined as a mixture of clips that have been traced to several sound archives, TV shows, videos from sites as YouTube, and video games. A high-powered device of some kind is heard charging up. This particular effect has a strong Tamoric effect mixed in, but doesn't share any kind of resemblance to any known device or form of media. The audio cuts back with the same transition described at the beginning of the current segment. Okay, what you hopefully just heard. That was his voice. What he said to me. I know, it doesn't really add up to what I have. That's to show you. But I did just show you, I hope. What happened after was, well, all I really remember is the screen flashing and hurting my eyes. But he was moving with every second of it. The last thing I remember was a shot of his whole body staring straight with his arms stretched out in front. And he had that same look on his face from before. Then everything, and I do mean my actual vision, went completely red, and then to black. Next thing I knew, I woke up. Well, let's just say somewhere else. I can't tell you because I don't know. Quite a few things have happened since then, my own adventures through this. But I've already devolved into what must have been about half an hour now. Besides, there's another important part you need to hear. I don't know how long it's passed since I first got into whatever this is, but the things I've seen. I don't know what this place is, if it's just a dream or if I'm hallucinating and in reality. I'm strapped down to a bed in a mental hospital or something. Or indeed, if this is some kind of place beyond your imagination or your nightmares. I know it sounds completely insane what I'm saying, but I don't know what else to say. I would try explaining how things work and the sights you get here, but I don't think I even have the words to describe that. I can tell you something I have seen, though. Bodies. A lot of brutality and murder. There have been characters either from the games or I'm guessing made by any of you since I don't recognize any of them. They get chased down before they just disappear, until he's done with them. And then there's the human victims that he chooses. Do you understand that I'm talking about real people here? Those people went through the same thing as me, only they weren't so lucky. They didn't have what I've got, and they weren't saved and given a chance to even survive, much less fight back. And it's your fault. Yes, you. You keep conjuring up these little pieces of fiction, artwork, and further proof of his existence. It's because of you that a place like this exists. All of those characters that you keep creating. They get about 5 minutes of life in this hellhole before their remains, as well as the people that he chooses to drag in here get left for me and others to find. And you continue to just bury us in this. And if you say, but I just played it and nothing happened, then he found you lacking, not worth his attention. Why do you have to give him the reign of terror that he has? Why can't you just draw him getting his face kicked in for a change? Why don't you just give up and give a break or, I don't know, something? You have to stop indulging in this thing's power. Believe me, once again, I know it's completely insane what I'm saying. And the little evidence I have of words and an apparent recording I'm not even sure you got to hear isn't much to go on. I should imagine you'd even question how I got that. Well, I just have it. That's all I've got for you. But if you listen to this point, then there must be some part of you that's convinced. Whether all this started off as, it must have grown. It's evolved. And it's refined itself. Even though you wouldn't know from looking at this place, either that or it's always been here. It just needed something to give it a shape. I don't know. Something I'm sure of, though, is also the reason I'm doing this. And if that's the reason I'm here to tell you, you have to stop feeding him. It's not for our sakes, or the sake of anyone else here, then for your own. I can't say what he looks for when he goes after somebody. He's very picky, leaving so many alone. Yet there will always be those few people who that spark his interest. If you believe me, then I'll make you a deal. If you leave this thing alone, then we can fight this in peace and stop it from spreading. He can't be killed, but he can be subdued. If you don't believe me, but you're still listening, just think about it. That's all I ask. I'm not asking for you to spread the word or stop making any of these characters. And I'm not saying destroy what there is to already have seen. You can't destroy it. There will always be a copy of this stuff somewhere in the world. And even then, I doubt he'd even let this place end in such a way. After being here for as long as I have, I feel as though these characters you've given life to in some way or another have the right to exist. And you people don't deserve to die. Would you agree? Just stop giving this creature the power it keeps using on us. Leave this one alone. He's extremely dangerous and just might choose you next. I'm literally only the living human being that I've come across here. So what the hell would your chances be? The only reason I've survived here is because something wanted us here. And because we're probably just as much of a freak as he is in some ways. I know what I ask is a lot. Maybe it's even impossible. In fact, there's even a part of you all that's hardwired to respond to violence. You may take offense to that, but it's the truth. Think about it. So many of you see what all these forms of media have to give you. You play games to feel strong. You watch films to escape from yourself. And when you see the news, you say, oh my, how tragic, yet you keep on watching. Just as long as it isn't happening to you. That's not some sick psycho you've been keeping locked up. That's just human nature. Ever since the start. I think the reason I've survived might be because I tried to stop the horror, rather than watching it from behind a monitor or television. I've survived and I'm still kicking back, even though this is a dark, brutal place where no one was meant to live. But there is some life here. There are a lot of enemies, but there are also a lot of allies. Make whatever judgment you see fit about what I have told you. It's not like it should matter to me anymore. But if you see some kind of home for Sonic.exe, then we are the AntiSonic.dll, and will continue to be a thorn in that fucker's side until our last breath. You have been warned, so if you're still stupid enough to put yourself in this much danger, it's at your own risk. The following sentence is mostly inaudible, and due to an experienced interface mixed with distorted screams, that resides for approximately 4 seconds. The sound clip has been cut up and rearranged. What follows is patches of static that continue into the end of the recording. One of 2 notable parts is the sudden presence of 2 distinctly distinct voices. This is most likely an explanation for the transition between tenses I and we. The second voice is that of a male with an American accent. Second post is what appeared to be a distorted cries making their way in the distance to what is assumed to be the narrator's location, as well as a low presence of a deep tone male's laughter. The voice has a resemblance to that of the individual heard in the sound segment. Second visible sign of tampering throughout the entire recording indicates that it has been determined as a powerful type of jamming signal, theoretically designed to overwhelm any output of electrical devices. This result seems that it has rendered its device inoperable. The evidence suggests there is a delay between the signal's impact and its effect. All known jamming tech available doesn't even possess the specific properties of the signal. Narrator. Found. Unknown. Surprised. It. Narrator. Not my fault. Drag the... Unknown. Agree? Here? Narrator. Other choice? Hope to know. Said s. We fight alone in peace. Unknown. Amen. Here. The static continues with what can be heard as several as yet unidentifiable creatures, followed by what is believed to be gunfire from at least 5 different sources, accompanied by shouting from the narrators along with the 2 extra voices. The first 2 are American accents belonging to both a female and a male. The third is that of another of a British male, and there are also sounds implying further uses of tools that cause projectiles of some kind of lethal force with high impact. Whether these tools are weapons cannot be determined, although it is likely. All mentioned factors take place over approximately the last 8 seconds. Unknown. Now! Narrator. I'm trying. He or us. Unknown number 3. Look out! Narrator. Oh, fuck. The struggle takes place between the narrator and what is believed to be one of the apparent creatures from which the cries originate from. The gunfire continues, almost remaining consistent throughout. The recording ends with the sound of the opening description, only it's now more like the jack being removed. Based on the loose assumption that it's not a mere hoax, it is unknown whether or not the persons responsible for this file uploaded surviving the incident. Files have been all but dismissed as a hoax due to the lack of concrete evidence, including such elements as the sound clips found in already existing forms of media. Also noted is that there is or never has been any by the name of Chris Lawrence or any individual having his personal details filed under missing persons. Neither has been anyone taking up residence or even connected to anywhere near the area of alleged disappearances. To prove this further, locals in the areas connected claim to have never heard of such a person. And that, my little shadows, was AntiSonic.dll, a Sonic creepypasta. My final thoughts on the story? Okay, before I actually get into the review, I do want to apologize for the fact that there's a lot of rain and everything. I just moved into my brand new trailer and everything, and it's raining like crazy. So if you do happen to hear any of that kind of, rain or anything, or thunder or lightning, just understand that that's pretty much the case. But overall, though, I will say the sound quality should definitely be a lot better. There's no echo or anything in here, so it should be a lot clearer, so the rain probably shouldn't be much of an issue either way. Now, with that being said, let's actually get back to the review. AntiSonic.dll. I've got to be completely honest here. This was actually a pretty good creepypasta, and especially one based off of Sonic.exe. Although, thinking about it now, it's a little bit ironic that this was actually created if, the whole point of this was, what the narrator was saying was that you shouldn't make any of this kind of thing with Sonic.exe, otherwise you're only going to continue to fuel his power and basically screw a lot of people over. Now, I do know that this isn't exactly a sequel to Sonic.exe, but given the fact that the sequel to Sonic.exe is crap, this I honestly would consider this one a better sequel, more or less. But with that being said, though, there's still a lot about this creepypasta that I can say played out pretty well. For one, I like that there was a different kind of transition, and it wasn't just solely from the narrator's point of view. It had, the point of view of the narrator and, other people, I think probably detectives and other things like such, and basically just a lot of evidence, being said, being dealt with, and yada 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 yada. I also like the fact that there's I wouldn't say really a whole lot of screenshots, but definitely a good amount of, effort and everything put into this creepypasta, which is great. I mean, especially with something like, if this was Sonic.exe, people, if this was Sonic.exe, then I'm guaranteed that Sonic.exe would not be considered the cliche crap fest that it's considered now, although I don't consider it as such. But in this manner, I think this one helps improve a lot more with the actual creepypasta in general. Now, of course, I think you all should probably know what I mean by, you guys should probably already know my thoughts on Sonic.exe, so I'm not really going to explain much of it. But what I will say, however, is that the rest of the story played out interestingly well. It was very well detailed, and I like the fact that, all this could easily have been faked. What I mean by that is, the whole concept itself. The missing persons, all those kind of things, all of that being, considered faked. Because like the investigation says, all the sounds and everything really just come from, clips from YouTube, video games, and other things like such. Which, if you really take a little time and effort to really think about it, it's not anything out of the ordinary. I mean, not at all. I mean, yeah, anybody can make something as fucked up and creepy as this. Hell, I could do the same thing if I wanted to. I choose not to, at least not yet. But, no, this is something that anybody can make. And it is extremely unnerving. And, at the same time, though, I think, if anything, this probably would have been made as a way to try and get people to stop obsessing over Sonic.exe. Now, it's 2019, obviously. Sonic.exe has pretty much been a dead creepypasta since, well, it got removed from the Creepypasta Wiki and into the Trollpasta Wiki. I'm not saying that people still don't do some fan art every so often, but if this entire thing was true, which, let's be honest, people, it's not, this entire concept itself, Sonic.exe's powers, quote-unquote, would have already been gone. I mean, there's literally nobody else that particularly cares about the story anymore. People don't really narrate it as often, and the story is just kind of a forgotten piece of crap nowadays. Many people hate it, and if anything, it wouldn't surprise me if, like the author said, somebody made an image of Sonic.exe getting his face kicked in. It's not really that shocking or surprising if somebody were to make that. But like I always say, this is simply my own personal opinion, and if you disagree with it, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions in regards to these creepypastas, and this is simply my own thoughts. My final rating of the story would have to be a 10 out of 10. I like the concept, I love the creepiness, the creep factor of it, and I genuinely found the story itself to be extremely entertaining and very well done. But of course, that's just my own thoughts. What did you guys think about this creepypasta? Did you guys enjoy it? Did you guys not? Also, what would you have personally done to help make the story a lot better? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'm the Shadow Reader. Thanks again for watching today's episode. And like always, roll the outro because I'm out. In fear and surprise as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to thee, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the figure
gripping horror-driven, nightmarish, gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.